Good afternoon, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining today's Cuppa Club. We're very excited to introduce Otley Common, and we have Andy Boyle, Finance Director, Andrew Howarth, Managing Director, and Stephanie Steed, MBE, Architect for the Otley Common. So before Andy, Andrew, and Stephanie introduce themselves, let's start by mentioning that the community share offer is live, it's open on the Ethex platform. It's got off to a great start, it's up to 10% already, and it's funding the next stage of development to transform the historic church building into a dynamic community-led cultural hub in Otley, and we're going to find out all about that in a minute. So if I may ask the team, that's Andrew, Stephanie, and Andy, in no particular order, to please introduce yourselves and we'll get started.
Shall I go first?
Please do.
I'm Andy Boyle. I am, as Paul said, I'm the finance director, and I used to be a partner in an accountancy practice until about 6 years ago, and I've a background in corporate finance and strategic planning, and actually quite a lot of work working with charities and social enterprises at a board level. And then 5 years ago, I actually moved to Otley and fell in love with the town as part of moving out of the accountancy profession. And along with Andrew and others, established a local climate and sustainability charity called Otley 2030, as well as a community energy company that I run, Otley Energy. And I'm also a director of a climate consultancy called Your Climate Strategy. And I spend most of my time working on advising on how we tackle climate change, but how we tackle it from a perspective of helping communities and supporting communities. So really excited at this project being involved and having the opportunity to provide a hub for all of the great work that's going on in the town.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andy. Stephanie, why don't you go next?
Hi there, thanks ever so much. So my name is Stephanie Stead, and I'm an architect. I'm based in Otley, but I specialise in community and heritage work. So I'm inspecting architect for 2 Grade 1 listed churches, Grade 2 star retreat, Diocese retreat, and a number of other Grade 2 buildings as well, but with a specialism in community work. So one of our biggest projects was the Fitzherbert Community Hub down in Brighton, which increased its free meals from providing 50 a week to 300, and we were a big part of trying to provide that that sort of social response. Actually, that architecture and good design can go a long way in doing that. And as a result, we've been commissioned by the RIBA Publishing to write a book on being a community architect. So look out for that in the next year.
That's brilliant. Fantastic. Andrew.
Yeah, hi, I'm Andrew Howarth. I've got a background in education. I was a teacher for about 15 years before I started moving into community work. And as Andy says, helped set up Otley 2030, a climate action charity in Otley that's been involved in lots of amazing projects around community engagement on climate change, but also nature and social justice. And I was brought onto this project because I had done the fundraising. I've been the fundraising lead on another project in the town where we raised over £200,000 to buy a local 20-acre woodland and save it for the community. So that's how I came to get involved in this.
Brilliant, fantastic. So I think we can already see we've got 3 sets of really very experienced practitioners who are sort of deep into the world of creating community assets. So that's fantastic. Do you think, Andrew, you can just give us a bit of an overview of Otley Common, and just set the scene for what you want your community share offer to achieve, i.e. how much you're trying to raise. And yeah,
I mean,
brilliant.
Just go back and Otley is an amazing place to live, as Andy was just saying. It's a market town of about 15,000 people, about 10 miles to the northwest of Leeds. It's in the Leeds metropolitan area, as it were, but very separate, with its own distinct culture and a real kind of vibrant community feel to it, with loads of amazing community groups doing incredible projects around the town, some great small scale venues in the town. We've got the courthouse doing loads of good stuff. But since we lost the Civic Centre in Otley, which was a big community building about a decade ago, there's not been this large scale kind of communal space for groups to meet, to put on large scale events, weddings, school events. So we are looking to kind of bring that kind of community space back into being in the town. With our focus, our kind of true north is all about providing an amazing community space, but also we want it to be kind of commercially viable as well. So we've got lots of elements in there, like office spaces, studio lets, co-working spaces, events, cafe, bar, that will obviously gain a profit for the people who invest and the community benefit society, but also support all this amazing community work we want to do in the building.
Fantastic. Yeah, and it's really, really brilliant initiative, and especially one that makes use of such a historic and architecturally significant building like the Methodist Church, which was the Otley. Is that correct? I think it was called the Otley originally, or the Wesley Otley. But anyway, so can you tell us how you started the conversation with the Methodist Church to get the project going? How did that all come into being?
Stephanie, you were there at the start, so do you want to take the lead on that one?
First, I got yelled at by across the road by the local councillor. I should have just kept running, but that's how I've ended up here. The Methodists have been amazing from day one. They don't particularly in their. The building was built for over 1,000 people, and there's only 40 of them there. So they're kind of knocking around in this massive. It's like a huge building. And it's such a huge liability to them. But it's been a history of Methodism in the town since like the late 18th century. So it's sad to see the Methodists go. And they didn't want to go, but they've had to because of financial straits. So from day one, as soon as the founding group saw an interest in it, they were like, yeah, they were all over it. They've done everything to be supportive of the scheme. They see this as the new step for local Methodism. They want to continue to worship there in the foreseeable future, which is great. So that cycle hasn't kind of changed or altered. And they've been very generous with their time and their information and their knowledge of the building, and giving us some wiggle room as we're kind of slowly developing the building. And I mean, I've been working on this now 3 years. And I think, Andrew, you've been just less than that, but not by
2 and a bit years.
2 and a bit years, and the Method has been supportive through that whole process. And whilst this is not a Methodist project and it's not run by the Methodists, something that's really quite lovely is it's really done on their principles. So when the Civic Society was first set up in the late 19th century, that was set up by the Methodists. Through public subscription, and then they built their own church through public subscription, and now we're building the next future of the building through public subscription. And without us necessarily intending to it, that intangible Methodism, intangible kind of Methodist history of Otley is kind of still with us, and that makes it really, really special. Even though it is not a Methodist project, it's somehow kept these principles at heart.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're sort of like tapping back into the community spirit that has set got the church built in the first place.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things where we're talking to people that when we've talked about kind of a share offer and kind of having a building for the community, owned by the community and so on, everything, well, that's rather radical. And actually it's pretty ancient. It's really great kind of bringing back the idea of the commons and coming back full circle.
Yes, no, I think that's fantastic. It's really good to sort of refresh people's memories that actually this is a very old, traditional and communal way of getting people together to do positive things in their community. So in that sense, it's not radical, but it may seem novel if you haven't come across it before. Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Stephanie. Really appreciate you getting yelled at by a councillor.
In a nice way. He just, are you the architect? I was like, yes. And here I am.
Brilliant. That's
3 years later.
fantastic. Excellent. No, thank you so much for that. So, can you just so one of the things that I picked up in there, and you've mentioned it already, Andrew, is the town of Otley. It's a market town, 15,000 people. It's got a long history. It's close to Leeds, but over the years, I suspect also since the global financial crisis, you've lost a lot of your community assets, the places where people would gather to celebrate the culture and the activities of Otley. I just wonder, could you paint a bit of a picture of the history of the town, its current environment, and why is there a gap in the market for a hub like the Otley?
The history of the town, I mean, goes back a long way. It's like you say, now it's part of Leeds, but there might be some people from Otley on here who would probably pull me up at this. It's a potted history, and there might be some inaccuracies, but it was very much a central kind of hub for the surrounding area. It's at the bottom of a hill called the Chevin, and there's kind of the North York Moors to the other side of it. And there used to be 3 cattle markets in the town. I think there's only one, so everybody would come down, bring their cattle, their sheep to market, and sell them there. And then I think we've got 20 pubs in the town now, but there used to be probably double that for half the population. So everybody would come in, drive their cattle, their sheep into town, sell them, and have a few beverages before going back out and probably having a fight on the way. So it's got a big history of being like the communal centre of the district for that. And then during the Industrial Revolution, it became one of the hubs of printing in the area. There's a thing called the Wharfdale Press, which is a revolutionary printing machine. There's still in the Otley Museum. Well, it's not in the Otley Museum. It's tucked away in a room somewhere in a warehouse at the moment. So there's no place for that. So finding a place for things like that might be an option, because there's no kind of communal space, because we've lost so many community facilities like the museum, like the civic centre, like a lot of the pubs. So yeah, like any town really, we've lost so much of that common space over the years, be that to housing developments or to roads, to flats being built, things like that. And we've also got I'd say a testy relationship with Leeds. We've got our own town council, a parish council, which doesn't have much power, but Leeds City Council kind of rules the roost over us. And Leeds City Council is one political party, and our town council is another. And a lot of people in Otley think Leeds do things to us without consulting. So there's a real independent kind of tradition here of people wanting to get on and do their own thing without other people telling them what to do. So having a space to bring all that together is really important for us, because I've been working on, like I said, community projects for the last 5 years or more here. And a lot of the stuff we do is about consultation, about how people can drive the future of their own towns. So having a space to bring all those kind of creative, wonderful people in this town together to help the town thrive and set out its own kind of independent vision going forward is a key part of it for me.
Yeah.
And I'd just add that, because I went to university in Leeds a very long time ago, and whenever my mum and dad came to visit, we'd often come up to Otley, because as Andrew was saying, it's right at the cusp of both the Leeds and the Bradford conurbation. So you've got a massive population just to the south of us, and up into the Dales. And when I moved here, it was very much about that, having the foot in both camps. And I think what I noticed when I moved to Leeds was, when I moved to Otley, was that having got involved with the group who was looking at climate and sustainability, that there's just this massive network of community organisations, massive amounts of volunteering, formal and informal volunteering, people supporting the groups that they're part of. And part of the work that Andrew's been doing with Otley 2030 is to really galvanise that and bring those groups together. And there's a huge amount of collaboration already on projects, and I think it's approaching 40 community groups that get together for lunch once a month to talk about the work that they're doing and the projects that they're doing. And really exciting to think that this can be a hub for that. And there are other venues, and a lot of those community groups have their own buildings, but just a hub where people can come and collaborate and develop projects together. I think that the community action hub element of this, where we want to support groups to get projects off the ground, support the community to get enterprises off the ground, is just a massive opportunity. And I think the link into Leeds, and this is where I might sort of differ a little bit, Andrew, is that we are a bit of a commuter town for Leeds as well, and we have great connections with the university. We do a lot of work with Leeds City Council and big organisations in Leeds like Arab, who did the big consultancy who did a sustainability report for us. So there's a lot of love for Otley in and around the valley that we're in, Harrogate to the north. So I think we're in a great position for this.
Fantastic. Stephanie, I noticed you nodding. Did you want to?
I did. Well, I was going to say some things, but kind of related to what Andrew was saying. I think what's important to note that there are amazing organisations and community buildings in Otley. They're small. They're doing really, really exciting things, and supporting like great music, great theatre, or just great kind of groups doing great stuff. But what we're keen to, we don't want to replace anything. We just really want to become a point of contact where we might end up signposting to another going, oh, that's a great idea. Go to them. They might know what they need, might be able to help you in whatever way. Or why don't we work together to put on something bigger? And so it's really about being like a node or a central node in all these other activities and groups and things to encourage that collaboration, as Andy said, as well. And I think that's kind of quite important to say that we don't want to replace or replicate, definitely not replicate. We just want to really start just bringing things together and giving people a larger home where they need it.
Yeah, so it's sort of making all those synergies happen, which is fantastic. And then really articulating the impact in terms of the Otley as a community asset within an area that's bubbling away with activity already. And I think it's something that Andrew mentioned at the beginning. When you've thought about this and conceived of it as an investment opportunity too, i.e. the business elements that make a profit, produce cash flow. Can you talk a little bit about the different activities that are going to produce, money for the venture?
You want me
to talk about that, Andy? You've done the
I'll talk about that. And so you've really got I think it's exactly right to think of them as those two elements to it. But I think like any good social enterprise, it's the magic happens with the marriage between the two, that this has to be for the community. It has to be providing affordable and exciting services for the community, and it has to be able to justify the investment that people are making in it. So you've got a really good, and it's such a beautiful building and such a big building with such varied spaces. And Steph's done incredible work imagining that and painting that vision of what it'll look like in the future. But it provides a huge amount of variety for what can be done. So we imagine the community using it for things like community groups, things like community events, parties, weddings. Should be a really big one, and I think it's a good example of the wedding side of it, because we've been fortunate enough to have a lot of advice from similar venues and successful venues to really get an understanding of what works, what doesn't work, and actually to get a bit of a leg up. So if we think about, and to your point about the different types of income, food and drink will be a big part of it. From the cafe, but actually a lot of the food and drink income for venues like this come from the events. They come from weddings, they come from gigs, that side of things, comedians, etc. You've got the co-working spaces, and office spaces. So this is places where local businesses can come in, get flexible space and grow as they grow into bigger spaces and access facilities. And that will be a key part of the hub that's supporting community organisations to come in and grow and learn. And then you've got all of those different lettings, so many rooms in the building that can be let in permanent ways or in what you'd call sessional lets. So from half an hour to an hour to a day, right from individual meetings all the way up to conferences that we can hold there.
And that's all at rates that are affordable to ordinary folk. Is that the idea?
Yeah, the idea is that, and I'm not sure if this is, we're effectively assuming two different rates really. What one is good, commercial, affordable in the real world, but then we expect to be providing discounted rates to community groups who are doing work that aligns to the purpose and the objectives of the organisation. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Andy. And we normally give Andrew, Andy, and Stephanie a script, so they've got a bit of a clue of what's coming next. But I'm just really mightily intrigued, Stephanie, by how do you make a building like the Otley? How do you think about it in terms of climate proofing it and insulating it? And
good question. So we've had very early on in the process, we managed to secure a little bit of funding where we got, as Andy had mentioned previously, from Arup, who did a decarbonisation strategy, which kind of gave us a bit of a foundation of what we could do going forward. Now, we're quite lucky as the person who did that strategy has started to work for us. So we've kind of got an absolute expert who's really looking at this building in a very careful way. Kind of climate proofing, for want of a better word, heritage buildings is tricky, but there's ways and means to do that. And I think they, first and foremost, is replacing the boilers at the moment. We just need to get it off the existing system. So we're currently working on how we can look at air source heat pumps. We've had a really good engineer come round who's looking at ways we can use the existing chimneys as flues and things like that, so we can really make use of the existing kind of structure. We do have a massive cellar we can take advantage of. We do have a side yard that we can take advantage of for these sorts of things. We'd very much like to put on solar panels as well. Now, that's going to be a little bit tougher with the heritage officer, but I have a bit of a plan how we might be able to come about that by using more of the rear roofs rather than the main church roofs. But there's a very strong argument, because depending on funding on this one, is if the grade 1 listed kind of refectory at York Minster can have solar panels, I think there's some space for local planners to consider putting them on this building, which is grade 2 listed. So there's ways and means, but we have to work it through it in a steady way. Internally, what we're doing, one of the first things we are looking at doing is putting in a secondary glazing, particularly to the chapel, as even the Methodists are on a budget and the windows are a picture framing glass. So that's going to be our main priority. It also helps massively soundproof it, as well as retaining some heat. And in insulating places where we can, but it's kind of eradicating those drafts, and so working our way through that. And it is also part of the most sustainable building is an existing building, so there's going to have to be compromises. She's an old building and is kind of awkward and quite fiddly in its layout, but there's lots of things that we can do to make it substantially better than it is. It just probably won't be to a passive house standard. And sustainability is bigger than just energy. So how we procure, how we specify, are materials recyclable? Are they from local sources? How are we avoiding materials being exported from maybe undesirable places, and so on and so forth. So it's looking at all the pillars of sustainability in a holistic way, and not just about energy savings, although that is incredibly important, but we need to think about it in a wider sense.
Brilliant.
Just to add to that as well, and this is kind of Steph's point about as sustainable building is one that already exists. The building, despite its age, is in incredible condition. I'm sat in here now, and it's quite shabby a bit. The decoration, it needs decorating and things like that, but structurally it's really sound, and there's still a lot going on in here. So when the Methodists put it on the market in the first place, a lot of the tenants drifted away because they thought it was going to be sold to developers or something. But when we got involved, those tenants have been slowly coming back, and there's just a real hub of activity. In the next office to me now, there's a counsellor who rents a space, and she does her counselling sessions from there. And every day we're getting more and more inquiries about people coming back into the space, and we're passing them on to the Methodists, who are slowly welcoming them back into the building. And we're actually going beyond their capacity. They're kind of complaining at the moment we're throwing too many people at them, because they're all a volunteer team who are trying to manage this. So there's a real kind of demand for the building, and it works now. But like Steph says, there's loads of stuff that needs to be done to bring it into the 21st century in terms of accessibility and climate proofing and things like that.
Exciting. Sorry, Andy, go.
Yeah, can I just add the point that we're speaking mostly about the church and the associate buildings, but for the £520,000 purchase price, it also comes with a beautiful 3-bedroom stone cottage, and it was the caretaker's cottage, and that's why it comes as part of the purchase. And the plan is to retrofit that to a good standard. It needs a refurbishment anyway, but retrofit that to a good standard. And actually open it as an eco home, an eco show home, because Otley 2030, Otley Energy, and a lot of people that we work with are working with the likes of the Leeds City Council and the UK Green Buildings Council on the retrofit agenda, and there's a real opportunity to showcase that sort of investment at a local level, so that people can come and see and feel and understand the technology to promote that kind of investment in the town.
Brilliant. I'm just going to take a question from Graham, who's just popped something into the chat box. And just sorry, Andy, on that three bedroomed what used to be the caretaker's cottage, is that just a showroom, or is that something that's going to produce an income too?
So there's two options at the moment. One is that the original one that went in the business plan was that it would be opened as like quite a quirky Airbnb, because there's a lack of that sort of accommodation in the town. But we're also in talks to rent it out as a residential property. So there's various options, but the idea is that it will make an income as a residence, but also make an income because these are the sort of numbers that aren't in the forecast yet, but whichever organisation is responsible for it as a show home will be paying a rent to use it as a show home. So the idea is that we're trying to make sure that we're getting income out of every bit of the building for as much of the day as possible.
Brilliant. Okay. So possibly one for Stephanie, but open to you all. Graham says, do you know how long your program will be to refurbish the church? And try and don't you haven't got all day to answer this question, so maybe paint a picture in phases, something like that.
It's how long is a piece of string? It's going to have to be phased in terms of what funds we have, what grant funding we can also apply for. It's an old building, so there's often, you take down a wall and you go, oh, there's a whole space in there we didn't know about. So it has to be done in a really steady way. We're going to focus on the areas first that bring in the most income. So the initial focus is to look at the chapel, because we can apply for different types of grant funding for that. It's more of a traditional kind of conservation sort of approach, but there's only certain grants that we can really access for that sort of support. But having that space opened up brings in the most kind of most sort of income. At the same time, we have other phases. So with the studio spaces, which are in the Sunday school classrooms, the plan is to refurbish 6 of them. They don't need too much work to them. They just need some decoration, some electrics, and sort out the windows, and learn from them. So we kind of see the kind of refurbishment as a bit of an iterative process as well. What works? What does the tenants like? What don't they like? What would they? A lot of them have original bench seating that we can't really take out. How does that affect things? How do we need to design around furniture? And then we can do the next 6, and then we can do the ones downstairs. The youth hall becomes a separate phase, but there's more grants available for supporting kind of youth work and kind of co-designing with young people as well. So that might take a little bit longer. But I want to make sure we involve young people, and particularly young women and girls, in the design of that space. So whilst I can't give it, it's going to take a year or anything like that, it's being phased in such a way that we could take advantage of what grants are available, but also what the viability of those spaces are. And those phasings might change, because it might be that we suddenly have an influx of cash to be able to do something very specific, or there's a bit of a change of a plan. So it is slightly in flux and flexible, but very much phased.
Yeah, brilliant.
To give us.
Just sort of with my accountant's head on, thinking about the forecasts, I would make the point that the forecasts are based on, so the money that we're raising to invest initially is enough to support the income that's in the forecasts, and we expect that phase of work to be over 12 months, but probably as projects do, bleeding into the next year. Yeah.
And if you look at page 24 of the share offer document, it's got those development phases broken down.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Well, I think that's exactly what we needed to hear. And I think that's exactly what Graham was after. I think there's a methodical
absolutely
to doing all this work.
And there's all sorts of things that need doing, but we're not going in like naively. It's about just working steadily through it, learning through the building. The building has so much knowledge to give us that we don't know, because it's an old building. So slowly working through it in a sensible and viable way.
Brilliant.
I'm working with the existing owners, the Methodists. There's an old guy called, I hope he's not listening, but there's a gentleman called Alan, who's kind of the de facto caretaker, who knows his building inside out, who's kind of writing a book on how to use the building at the moment. So we're trying to download all the knowledge from him.
Of course, you don't really think of a building as having its own sort of personality and character, but I guess he's a spokesperson for that, isn't he? So it must be a real treasured asset for you guys.
Absolutely,
yeah, excellent. Really, really good. Okay, that's really very helpful in sort of building the picture, and we're getting a very clear kind of overall picture. I don't want to sort of like lean into the organizational aspects of what you guys have done too much, but I mean, it's a real testament to your ability to organize that you've got to this stage. And you've brought a lot of different stakeholders together. So you've talked about a few of them. You talked about Arup, you've talked about the Methodists, that you've talked about the councillors, you've talked about all these other community groups. I'm sure there are lots of other volunteers and professionals. So can you give us a little bit of a sense of how you organize all these different people and bring them together, and how they buy into the vision of Otley? So I suspect that's what kind of everybody has in common, the vision of making Otley Common a reality.
Andrew?
Yeah, go on then. I'll go on that. It's a challenge, but it's kind of been, like Steph says, this project's probably been going on 3 years, but for me, it's been going on for 5 or 6 years now, since 2019. So I've been working with Otley 2030 kind of on this climate strategy, but we deliberately set up Otley 2030 as we're not a demonstration group. We're out there actually working with the community to see what they want to do to improve the future of the town and bringing everybody along for the ride. So like Andy said, we've been engaged in loads of different community groups. We help set up these community lunches and things. So we've been engaging in all sorts of different projects across the town, be that community larders, solar panels, buying forests, working with a local school. So I've been kind of networking across the town for the last 6 years, making those connections. So we've got a real wealth of knowledge. We can reach out to, be it in the Chamber of Trade and Otley Action for Older People, in Otley Courthouse, people there. There's all sorts of amazing knowledge that we can draw in to help this project work. And we've got a great marketing team as well, gentleman called Stephen, who just worked on the document, share-off document. And we've been going out and reaching out to the community to get people involved. And like Andy said, there's so many people doing wonderful things in Otley. We've had dozens of people step forward to kind of get involved and offer their skill set. And we have a structure now where we have we've got the board and then a bit of a management committee, but then from that management committee, there's lots of subcommittees working on infrastructure, operations, fundraising, events and marketing. Another one I've missed, but I can't remember. And across those array of volunteers, we're covering all these different areas, but feeding in to the whole to make sure everything kind of stitches together. And we've got another 30 or 40 volunteers on our long list who are people who want to do the get your hands dirty stuff, who perhaps don't like the kind of policy side of it or whatever. Like they want to come and do some painting, they want to come and do the gardens or whatever. So yeah, there's just an incredible amount of enthusiasm across the town for this kind of project and great skills. And yeah, we've just got that web already kind of developed and they're all kind of coming in on board. And it's just having the biggest difficulty, I will say, is having the time as a group of volunteers to manage such a project, because as we've been through here, there's so many different aspects to it. And yeah, when you're setting up a company, essentially what this is, you've got so many things to think about. But at the core of our team, we've got some real skilled people who have worked, like the head of our board, for example, the chair of our board, for example, Claire. She is I always forget her position, but she basically runs all of the teaching hospitals in Leeds, 7 NHS teaching hospitals. So
Chief Operating Officer.
Chief Operating Officer. So she's used to managing buildings on this kind of scale. Our secretary, similarly, is a former civil servant with the NHS, and he's used to doing kind of the admin side of all this stuff. So we've got a real incredible team stitching all this stuff together.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. That's a great answer. So we're kind of winding up.
Can I just say,
Yeah,
sorry, back on the building, I've just shared something in the chat. I don't know how this actually works, whether everybody can see that, but we've talked a lot about the building, and there's a local company, again, reaching out to our networks. There's a company based in Otley who do these kind of 3D tours of buildings, and they offered to come and do one for free. They're called Apollo 3D, and I've just put the link in the chat. So if you want to actually have a visual representation of what we're talking about, where I am now, then go on there and have a tour of the building. It's an amazing asset to have.
Brilliant. Well, we'll add that as an asset to your profile on the Ethex website, as well as adding it to the email that goes out on the back of this, so everybody can have the opportunity to take a good look. I know that you've been very successful in lining up investors to come into the offer. So I know that I've spoken to Otley Town Council, and you've got your high net worth individuals that are investing, which is obviously a brilliant vote of confidence. So can you tell us a little bit about what the key risks to investors are in terms of delivering the impacts and the success of the hub? Andy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think it's all about footfall, isn't it? It's all about patronage and the success and our ability to deliver both the objects of the charity, which are all around community well-being, sustainability, etc., but also to deliver returns to shareholders is really about how many people we manage to get through the door. And I think a big part of the risk mitigation with that is that all of those incredible networks that that Andrew was just talking about. So this is already very much a community exercise. This is the community coming together to make this happen. All of those groups who want to run things in there. And I think inspired by there's a great venue in Leeds, in Headingley, closer to the city centre, called the Left Bank. And they have an inspirational director there called Sue, who she's really created this, what I would call it, I don't know what she calls it, but sort of community curation. That actually it's the community who say what they want, and the community who come forward with ideas, so that you know that there's things being put on that there's a need for at a community level. And then, as we were talking about earlier, that it's very much about the community and creating a space for them, but also the commercial side. And again, at Left Bank and other venues around the region, really successful at just putting great events on, whether they're great gigs or great markets, or really well-trodden paths of great events that bring people through the door, bring that sort of ticket income in, but also bring in the spend on food and drink. And because of where we are, because we are so close to the Leeds Bradford conurbation, and we have great towns around us like Ilkley and Harrogate, we really think it can become a destination for the town, which is important as well in terms of bringing in that nighttime economy into the town. So yeah, I think the key risk is that people won't come. The best thing we can do is make sure that there's lots of great things that people want to come to.
Brilliant, excellent, and I'm sure there are. In fact, I know.
Yeah.
In fact, I know there are.
Yeah.
So, a final question from our audience, from Graham. He says, "I'm assuming that you need a minimum investment to start this process. So, maybe you can quickly unpack that for us." And well, Stephanie, do you want to have a go at unpacking that one, or?
I think this is probably one for Andy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we've already raised.
Do you want me to do this?
Yeah, go on. I'll be saying close to.
Pass it along.
I tell you what, Andrew. I tell you what. If you can sort of answer that question as part of your call to action about why the audience should be investing in your offer, that would be a really good way to finish.
Yeah, I don't know whether people have realised on the Ethex platform that we did actually do a crowdfunder share offer locally, which we didn't really publish nationally. So we raised over 205,000 from that and from various other sources, including the Community Ownership Fund, which was part of the Levelling Up package. We had a total of about 615,000 before we launched this share offer. We've also got commitments from a few local high net worth individuals, which takes our total to over 700,000 now. So in the share off document, it says 615,000, but we're actually about 700,000. Our minimum target is 709,000, and we're pretty much there. So we're ready to kind of trigger the purchase with the Methodist team. And the minimum covers the purchase of the building for 520,000, like Andy says. That's everything. That's the whole chapel, the caretaker's cottage, everything. And then it gives us about 180,000 to employ a couple of people to run the place and to do those early scale renovations. But we want to reach the optimum, which will allow us to do more renovations to start bringing in more money and making that business plan work. So yeah, we're pretty much past the minimum. But obviously we need to reach the 94,000 on Ethex to draw that down to complete that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that'd be absolutely fine. So I'm sure we'll get there in no time at all.
Yeah, and we know local people have committed pretty much that much already that are going to go in the next week or two. So we know we're not far off that anyway. So yeah, we're looking to get that extra 200,000 or so to take us to our optimum to fulfill what's in the share offer document and the forecasts. What was the second part of your question? Sorry.
The call to action. Why should everybody be supporting this great project?
Well, I mean, Yeah, I would say the call to action has been the last 45 minutes, but yeah, it is having worked across the community for the last 5 or 6 years, it feels like the heart and soul has been ripped out of a lot of communities. There's a lot of indifference, and we've seen how kind of the political system has really kind of alienated and atomized people. And we want to create this amazing space that brings the town, the community together, but also provides an exemplar for other towns, other communities to get on board and inspires them, but also kind of washes itself as a business and shows that you can run something as a business effectively and make money, but also use it as a tool of kind of social change to enable people to thrive in your local community.
Brilliant. Enabling people to thrive in their local community. I think that kind of sums it up pretty nicely. So, thank you very much to Andrew, Stephanie, and Andy. The offer is open on Ethex until the 20th of May, and we will be sending regular updates so you can see how the offer is progressing on our website at ethex.org.uk. So please do go and take a look at that. Thanks again to the audience for your time, much appreciated. And just for the Andy, Andrew, and Stephanie to say thank you and goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you to you for all your support, Paul, and thank you for everybody for attending.
Yeah, thanks to all the team at Ethex and for all the supporters. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Bye now. Bye.